Hi, this is Kristine Caneda, Serena Patel, and Paige Prescott, and our court case is McDonald v. Chicago. In 1982, Chicago passed a law banning new handgun registrations and required all firearms to have registration. The law effectively prohibited most private citizens from keeping handguns. This law stood for nearly 30 years until a new Supreme Court ruling opened the possibility for a challenge. In District of Columbia v. Heller in 2008, the Supreme Court ruled that the Second Amendment protected an individual's right to possess and carry weapons. The Heller decision struck a District of Columbia law that prohibited residents from possessing firearms, including handguns, in the home. The named plaintiff, Otis McDonald, was a 76-year-old Oak Park resident and retired maintenance engineer. He was an experienced hunter and legally owned several hunting rifles. He felt increasing concerns about safety in his neighborhood warranted owning a handgun, but doing so was illegal under Chicago's gun ordinance. In anticipating the result of District of Columbia v. Heller, the plaintiffs in McDonald v. Chicago filed their lawsuits the same day the Heller decision was announced. They alleged that Chicago's firearm law violated this right to bear arms. The NRA and others filed separate lawsuits challenging the Chicago law and Oak Park law that prohibited the possession or carrying of handguns and other firearms except for rifles or shotguns in one's homes. Each suit alleged that the law violated the right of individuals to carry and possess weapons, which the Supreme Court had found to be protected by the Second Amendment in District of Columbia v. Heller in 2008. The question was if the Second Amendment is considered to the states and their political subdivisions. Citing selective incorporation, the Supreme Court's gradual application to the states of most protections of the Bill of Rights through the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. This prohibits the states from denying life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The Federal District Court rejected McDonald's claims that the ban was unconstitutional, noting that prior Supreme Court cases had refrained from deciding whether the Second Amendment applied to the states. The Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals upheld that decision, relying on three 19th century cases that interpreted the 14th Amendment's Privileges and Immunities Clause. They noted that it was compelled to adhere to precedents in which the Supreme Court rebuffed requests to apply the Second Amendment to the states. They also noted that the Heller dealt with a law enacted under the authority of the national government, while the Illinois laws at issue were enacted by Chicago and Oak Park subordinate bodies of a state.
Question 1. How does District of Columbia v. Heller impact McDonald v. Chicago? District of Columbia v. Heller impacts McDonald v. Chicago because the decision in this case gave way and a good support in allowing for McDonald's case to have a strong chance in being fought for due to the idea that the Second Amendment was being violated. The petitioner, Otis McDonald, argued that the 1982 law issuing handgun registrations violated the 14th Amendment's Privileges and Immunities Clause, as well as the Due Process Clause. He argued that the Second Amendment is applicable through that clause as well as through the 14th Amendment's Privileges or Immunities Clause. This forbids the states from abridging the privileges or immunities of citizens in the United States. The defendant affirmed the district court's dismissal. The Seventh Circuit stated that Heller dealt with a law enacted under the authority of the national government, while the Illinois law at issue were enacted by Chicago and Oak Park, subordinate bodies of a state. The defendant also noted that the Supreme Court has refused to incorporate the Second Amendment against states in the past. Question 2. How does the concept of stare decisis play a factor in Chicago's argument? Chicago noted that the Supreme Court has refused to incorporate the Second Amendment against the states in the past as seen with prior court cases of similar issues. To this, the rulings of the case can be influenced by these past decisions. The Supreme Court granted certiorari to the plaintiffs in McDonald on September 30, 2009, and oral arguments were heard on March 2, 2010. The Supreme Court reversed the Seventh Circuit, holding that the 14th Amendment makes the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms for the purpose of self-defense applicable to the states. They also reversed and remanded the appellate court's decision. In writing for the majority, Samuel A. Alito Jr. argued on the basis of Heller that the Second Amendment should selectively be incorporated as applicable to the states through the Due Process Clause because of the individual right to possess and use firearms for traditionally lawful purposes, particularly self-defense, which is fundamental to the American scheme of order, liberty, and system of justice.
The Chief Justice for this case was John Roberts. The vote count was 5-4 in favor of Otis McDonald. The reasoning behind this was that the 14th Amendment makes the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms for the purpose of self-defense applicable to the states. They argued that Chicago's gun laws were indeed a violation of these citizens' Second Amendment rights. Question 3. How did the 14th Amendment play a major factor in the Supreme Court's decision? The 14th Amendment made the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms for the purpose of self-defense applicable to the states. This amendment prohibits the states from denying life, liberty, or property without due process of law, thus highlighting the importance of the right to keep and bear arms with it being considered someone's property. This case is important to the idea that self-defense is a significant right, so the Second Amendment applies to the states. Through the 14th Amendment, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is connected and ruled within the individual states. The court ruled that since the 14th Amendment ensured that the entirety of the Constitution applied to a state's inhabitants, Chicago could not restrict its citizens' rights to keep and bear arms by denying them the right to legally purchase a handgun for lawful purposes. Question number 4. How would the significance and impact of this case be different had McDonald lost? The significance and impact of this case would have been different by proving the Second Amendment did not truly guarantee an individual's right to keep and bear arms, with regards of having the 14th Amendment's right to have property. Thank you so much for listening for our court case presentation. It's now game time.